We have no public comment, so we're going to move to item 3. It's an action item. Approve the July 10th, 2024 minutes. I'm looking for a motion.
Move approval.
I have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this item? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We are going to move to, I believe we're going to move to Harry. Item 5, federal legislative update. Harry, you have the floor. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I have a whole lot to update you since I know we had a good meeting in July, and it was just on the, right after the big announcement by FTA on your bus facilities and Low-No grant, so the largest in the state, one of the largest in the country. So I think that was what, Brad, $27.8 million. And I saw, Brad, you want to talk about that, I think, adjusting your bus buy, but the only other things that I have, as you know, Congress is in an extended summer recess period. The House actually left town a week early, so they're in their second full week of the recess period. They're not reconvening neither the House nor the Senate until September 9th, so it's going to be a long run before they get back. When they come back, they'll have 3 weeks of legislative work until the end of September, which is the end of the current fiscal year. So during that 3 weeks, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do about a continuing funding resolution to keep the government open through the election period. There's conversation about keeping it open until mid-November. There's conversation about passing a resolution to keep it open until mid-December. And there are some on the Republican side who want to extend the continuing resolution into the new year and the new Congress. And now there will be a new administration, whichever one it is. So there's some conversation there. So I don't know where that'll play down. I don't foresee anybody allowing the government to get shut down at the end of September, but it will be interesting to see what they decide to do. The House, as we talked about on the last call, the House Appropriations Committee approved its version of the Transportation Appropriations Bill, which included the request by Representative Castor for $850,000 to support your project on 34th Street, the improvements to the 34th Street bus services there to make them a faster service, kind of I guess what Brad, you call it, Sunrunner Light, a little bit like a Sunrunner service there. So she's got that. The House was supposed to take that bill up before they recessed at the end of July, but they ended up postponing that until they come back in September. So it'll get done eventually, but that was on hold. The Senate Appropriations Committee approved all of their appropriations bills in the committee during the month of July, except for one. They didn't do the Homeland Security bill. And none of those have gone through the Senate floor yet. So at some point here, whenever they decide they're going to wrap up their appropriations work, whether it's the end of the calendar year or in next year, they're going to have to reconcile 12 different appropriations bills and figure that out. But Brad, I think the project that Kathy Castor did for you guys will be fine. It's just a matter of when it gets done. Brad, I'm not sure, unless there are any other questions, I'm not sure I have anything else really to report right now, kind of in a lull period here.
All right, thank you, Harry. Brad had stepped away. I think we're...
Still trying to get Ron in.
Oh, he's still trying to get Ron in? Okay. Do we have any questions for Harry? Anybody? Brad, you have any comments for Harry?
Well, yeah, Harry, you can hear me, right? You can hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I thought I would just update the committee on the other issues that we're working on with you and the federal government.
You want to use this?
Oh, sure. So I made this last night. So as Harry said, a month ago we got awarded an awesome amount of funding from the federal Low-No grant program that provided us funding for buses. What our application was and what was approved was funding for 12 electric buses and 4 hybrid electric buses and charging infrastructure. But this was a very seminal moment by getting this large award, and it's probably not one that we'll get. You never know. We're going to keep applying, but we may not get this in subsequent years. So I have asked our staff, Henry Lukasik and Debbie, to see if we could get more buses with this available funding. We could relook at our program to see if we could possibly do that. We would have to, of course, take that to the PSTA board for approval, but we'd also have to get the federal government to agree to do that. But my thought was that, well, the announcements just happened. This usually takes the federal government a year before we get the money. So maybe now, before things get settled in, maybe there's an opportunity, like right now, to make an adjustment. So we've already asked FTA to allow us to change our order. Henry is going to really wow the finance committee in 2 weeks with his discussion of how he has been working with Gillig to make sure they have this special kind of hybrid transmission that PSTA likes available for the hybrids. He's got that confirmed. And then the goal would be to increase the number of hybrid electric buses. We would not need to invest in more electric chargers, because now we have determined that we can charge more than one bus per night per charger. Essentially, one bus charges for 4 hours, then you take it off, and then you charge another bus. So we don't have to invest on any more electric infrastructure, and then that allows us to get more buses. We also be able to get some smaller buses, smaller hybrid electric buses, which will be helpful as well. So I'm hopeful that in 2 weeks we'll be able to take this to the finance committee and then to the PSTA board, and this would be sort of an historic turnaround. We're not going to actually get the money from the federal government that was just announced, probably for at least a year, but that's okay because the buses take more than a year to manufacture, and so we won't have to pay it. So FYI to that, Harry, that's what we're trying to do. And FTA, I think, seems fairly amenable to this. I don't know. We'll see. They had some questions, but it seemed like they're pretty open. As long as we don't get fewer buses than we applied for, if we get more, it seems like they are okay with it. Any questions on that before we move on to the second one? Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
Thank you. Would that impact at all the workforce hiring, the hiring and training element?
No. We would. There was a certain amount allocated to workforce training funds that we would maintain.
Okay.
We're essentially just swapping out the money, about $5 million in the award that was for electric infrastructure, and changing that into buses, more buses.
So what you're saying is that that what we have already is enough and in excellent repair, like nothing needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
As far as the as far as the charging.
Yes. Of course, we're installing the electric infrastructure right now with Duke Energy is out there finishing up the installation of 60 additional chargers, and we have determined that will be enough for the 62 buses that we're getting right now, plus these 12 additional hybrids that we're getting with this. So we do not need additional charging infrastructure, and we can still get more buses, which will allow us to replace more of our oldest buses in our fleet. It'll put us
Right.
on a better sustainable fleet replacement schedule by doing this.
So getting 20 buses will still have what we need for the charging infrastructure. At what point would we need more? Like how?
We're coming up with a mathematical formula Henry's got
Okay.
about what percentage we think would be optimal as far as what percentage of your fleet, electric fleet, do you have to have chargers for? presenting that as well. But it's not one for one. But we're
Right.
confident of that.
Okay. So Harry, what do you think the chances are of FTA approving this request?
They've been pretty flexible, I think, Brad, on what they've been doing. In fact, some of these awards, and I've heard from other transit agencies, these bus and bus facility awards, most of the applicants applied for more money than they got. And the FTA was providing them some, right, Brad, some flexibility on how to spend the smaller amount of money you got to do the things that are in your application, and letting the agencies try and figure out which parts of the proposal they wanted to fund. So I think they've shown some good flexibility. And I think if, Brad, if you can show you can get, you don't need all the chargers now, I think they'll be happy with that, and you can buy more buses. I think essentially you're doing what you wanted to do, is put more buses on the road, and you needed some charging infrastructure, you thought, but now you don't need it. So I think they'll be fine. We can always, Brad, you're coming up later this month. I mean, maybe we go over and talk to FTA if we need to do that, or we could even get Congresswoman Castro to weigh in and indicate her support.
That's great. That's great. I think it tells a good story that you've been aggressive about getting the infrastructure and the buses, and we actually, we have enough. I just think I would think they would appreciate that, because ultimately, with the goal is to have more of the buses on the roads. So it kind of, helps to further the overall goal. So I'm glad
And Brad,
that
you'd be buying
FTA
more
is
buses
usually
off the
flexible
contract,
on
which
things
is
like
another
this.
goal of theirs too, right, Brad, to buy more of the larger buy buses, correct?
Yeah, I think they will be, I'm hopeful that they'll be okay with this. Congress approved a Low-No program that they have a certain number of buses that they need. Congress requires to order in no emission, that would be electric buses. And then they have to allocate a certain amount of money for buses in the low, so it's low and no. And low means hybrid or maybe CNG. And so we got, that's why we had to buy at least the number that we applied for, because they're counting, the electrics are in from the low category, and the hybrids are from the, or no, I'm sorry, the hybrids are from the low, the electrics are from the no.
How many of each it would be included in the 20?
12 electrics and 8 hybrids.
8?
8.
I wrote
Yeah.
4.
The original grant application was just for 4, and now we're
Trying for
move
8,
it to 8.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Um,
Brad, I have one quick question.
Okay, go
Our
for it.
ultimate goal, correct, and if I'm wrong, is we want to get rid of all the diesel buses, correct?
we do, yeah.
And will this help, get that done, or are we still gonna have
Yes.
a lot of diesel buses?
I think we will be, this will get us through all the diesel, buses. We will not have diesel buses, we'll have hybrid buses. And we're always trying to replace buses on a schedule of every 15 years. So this will really move us. Right now, we do have some buses that are 2005s. That
Right.
means they're 19 years that are running around Pinellas. And, so this will get rid of the 2005s and 6s, get us all the way to the 2010s. So we will be in pretty darn good shape.
And I also like what you mentioned about the smaller buses. You and I have talked about that, so I
Yeah.
think that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to number 2. I don't really have much to report on this. I reported this a couple of meetings ago that we're still battling with the federal government on our mobility program and using of TNCs, Uber and Lyft, because Uber, Lyft, and taxis are not, the drivers of those are not drug tested by their employer. If you are an Uber driver, you just sign up on the app, and then you go, you fill out some information, you provide some background information, but there's no drug testing, and then you drive Uber whenever you want to. It's really kind of impossible for Uber and Lyft to drug test their employees, or at least that's what the companies have said, they can't really do that. There was a meeting, we've been trying to meet with the FTA administrator, and there was a meeting that happened earlier this week. That it looks like, at least for now, FTA is holding fast with saying that their exemption that has been in place since 2001 for taxis may not be applicable anymore, or in the same way that we've been interpreting. So there might be changes to that program. We're just going to have to see. That's sort of to be determined. There's a long-term hope, and this is where maybe PSTA could take a position, and then we could work with Harry to get some meetings in the next reauthorization that Congress does, that they would provide some clarity on the use of TNCs, Uber, Lyft, taxis, and how that could be done. But we'll just see on that. And then third is, I talked to Debbie last night, and we're gonna try to collect our expenses for Hurricane or Tropical Storm Debbie that just happened. And we'll see and apply to FEMA to see if we can get reimbursed for that. Hart got reimbursed for labor expenses, and PSA has never gotten labor expenses reimbursed by FEMA. So it's a new day, and we're gonna try. Theo's gonna collect all the information, all the overtime that we had, even though we didn't have a lot, we had some, and see if we can get any funding.
That's great.
Yeah. Any reaction to any of those things, Harry? Any other reaction?
No, Brad, just one thing on going back to the drug and testing exemption, and I don't know how they would react, but as I mentioned earlier, at some point before the end of the year, hopefully the House and Senate Appropriations Committees will resolve their differences between the two transportation appropriations bills. And maybe you should talk to APTA and the folks you're working with on this, but maybe we could try and ask for some report language in the final version of that bill. It would be report language, not legislative language, but something calling attention to the need to resolve this issue because it's going to impact important services. Or I don't know, we could come up with some language, but I mean, maybe something I don't think you can live in limbo until we're not doing another highway authorization bill, for 2 more years. So I don't know that you can live in limbo that long, but maybe some report language expressing the committee's concern about change in interpretation, or provide the committee with a brief. I don't know. We could talk about it, Brad, but it might be, we got a little time. Maybe it's worth talking to APTA and see if we can't get a little groundswell of support to put something in the bill. In the report.
Yeah, I think that the hope was that maybe something could be resolved this summer, and that looks like it's not gonna happen.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
On the new buses that we're gonna be purchasing, I know there's been some talk on the full board about getting smaller buses, for some of the routes.
Yeah.
Are these gonna be full-size buses, or are they gonna be the smaller ones that have been discussed?
Well, what we're proposing for the hybrids, we can get those in a smaller, slightly smaller, 35-foot version than a little bit more than 40-foot electric buses. Try to get some smaller buses that way. And that has a fewer seats, but it can be handled on most of our routes. A lot of our routes can use the 35s. Yeah, and then we do have we have a fleet of existing small buses that we're putting out there as well. One of the things with the electric buses is that you want the largest battery possible for the electric bus to get the most range and the most number of miles between charges. And so the bigger the battery, the longer the bus. But unfortunately, the price from Gillig is about the same, because the only difference between a long bus and a shorter bus is the piece of plywood that makes the floor. The rest of the bus is basically the same, so it's always frustrating to me. So you don't get that much of a price discount by getting a shorter bus. Anyway.
All right. Any other questions?
Questions?
Brad, great job on that presentation. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you all.
All right.
Hope everybody's okay.
Yeah. Keep us updated on the snow.
No.
All right, let's move on to item 4, state legislative. Is Ron on the call?
I'm still having
He's
issues
on the
trying to
call.
log in. I just sent him an updated
Ron, are you there?
link.
Ron, say hello.
He logged in. He said he logged in on your link.
All right, do we want to, Brad, you want to talk about 4B candidate city participation?
Is that a Ron thing?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Ron thing? Okay.
We could do it while they're talking about the
Yeah.
No.
You want him to log back in on that?
Yeah, he's gonna reboot
Okay.
Zoom, see if that'll.
All right. We can do that. Anybody want a cup of coffee or a donut or?
Yeah, Harry, we're gonna reboot
Yes.
Zoom. Oh, we're muted. We're gonna reboot Zoom to see if we can get Ron to join. So you'll have to
Okay.
rejoin.
Mr. Chair, we could talk about the Kansas City thing.
Okay.
While we're waiting here.
Sure.
Commissioner Tom Reed, who is from South Pasadena, but he represents, on PSTA, he represents multiple smaller cities, including Kansas City, who is one of the 5 areas of Pinellas County that does not levy the PSTA property tax. And he has talked to a couple of Kansas City commissioners who has expressed interest in how that city might become part of PSTA. Well, yes, the value of the property in Kansas City, which relative to most other cities is not that much, would be part of PSTA.
Hey, everybody.
All right,
Ron
Ron.
is there. It worked.
We had him for a second.
Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear
I
you.
think you guys are on mute.
I can hear you. I can hear you, Ron. It's Harry.
Hey, Harry, how you doing?
Hey, Ron.
Yeah, it says,
I can also see you and I can see me, so I like this version better.
We can see you and we can hear you.
They can't hear us.
Thanks for letting me in, everybody. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Ron, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good news is I don't have much of an update. I know Brad's got an update on some of the things that at Tallahassee relating to the bus wraps. I think I've only got 2 things for you this morning. Number one, it's getting close to the time we need to start worrying about our legislative agenda for next year.
Yeah.
Obviously committee weeks don't start until January. Nothing's gonna really start happening in Tallahassee until January, after the election. So, I think I have a call with Brad later this week. We'll sit down and start talking about maybe the time frame. But I'm thinking of bringing something back to the legislative committee, maybe at the October meeting that the board can approve either in October or November. Part of that's going to be driven by the fact if there's going to be another local bill this year or not. We're in the process of setting up another meeting with Representative Cheney, kind of as a follow-up to the meeting we had, I think back in May. So it's time we kind of circle back with her and have a conversation. So Brad, I'm not sure I know you have a slide. Did you want to kind of walk the committee through, number one, I know that DOT has released some rules with regards to the bus wraps. The more importantly, I think you want to give a quick update on administrative costs, executive leadership salaries as well, which all of that was a part of House Bill 1301 last year.
Right, so since the legislative session ended, you will recall that FDOT was tasked in that bill with issuing regulations about advertising to all of the transit systems across the state of Florida. They did that last Friday, finally, and what the regulations that FDOT published still a little confusing, but they essentially do not allow for any ads of on buses purchased with state funds, state DOT funds. The good news is that PSA's buses are not purchased with DOT funds, as we just discussed, where they're purchased with federal funds. So I think that will be generally okay for us to still have revenue generating ads on most or all of our buses from this point forward. There's just some questions about the interpretation of state funds for some of our other services, like the Sunrunner. For example, that didn't have state funds in that project. Now, Sunrunner doesn't have any ads on the sides of its buses anyway, but there was a lot of questions that came up from transit systems around the state about this. So I think there'll be some answers provided, maybe some I don't know if there'll be modification to this over the next year, but this is something, Ron, that maybe, no doubt there'll be some questions, I think, asked by the state association for at least clarification, if not for the legislature to sort of provide some clarification on that. I don't know if you want to say anything further. And then PSTA, for its sake, has basically discontinued any wrapping of any buses for any holiday or anything, which I'm not really certain. It does seem like the new DOT language would prohibit that. But again, it mostly is focused on state DOT purchased buses. Ron, I don't know if you have anything else to update on that.
Yeah, Brad, I think the only thing I would add is I don't think this issue's done in Tallahassee. I think there'll be some additional legislation next year that could be included to try to make this a little bit more restrictive. So that's something we're going to have to definitely monitor. At one point there was some talk about, any transit organization that accepts any state dollars of any type would not be able to do any type of advertising. Obviously, we do get some state dollars, so because of that, it would restrict our ability to do advertising on any of our buses. So, again, that issue may come back up again next year. I know that there's already been some examples that the governor's office has used on some of our sister organizations that have used bus wraps for things that I think the governor's office has had some concerns with, not about PSTA, but about some other transit organizations. So we're gonna have to definitely monitor this. So we need to see what happens with the, with the interpretation of this new rule, number one. Number two, I do know the state association is going to ask some questions. And number three, I fully expect going into January, this will be a continued topic in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Me too. It's interesting that in the last month or so, the outdoor advertising lobby has got an exercise about this, and they obviously want to keep ads available on the sides of buses. And they have, I guess, been influential because in the month of July, the first draft I heard about the FDOT rule was going to ban all advertising, and now advertising seems like it's going to be okay. And they came up with this idea that it just shouldn't be on state-funded buses, but I think that'll be more on that. Number two and number three were included in House Bill 1301 as sort of transparency and efficiency measures. I don't think their target was PSDA or anything like that, but that was in the bill, and it seems like PSDA will be okay in compliance with that bill. We're hopeful to be okay, what we are required to do is announce after November 1st the percentage that our administrative costs make up of our total budget. And I think the number for the most recent year that FDOT calculated was around 27%. And we just have to announce that percentage. And publicly, and then we have to identify if it is more than 20% over the average for our tier size of bus systems, which means over 100 buses. And we are not. We are right around the average for that. So I think we'll be okay on that one. And then number three is just that of course, all of our salaries as public employees are already published, public record, but they will be published on our website on November 1st, and we're incorporating in the new website that we're building as well, for all those who want to see our fancy salaries. And then number four, 34th Street Spark Service, which we will be launching in next fiscal year, will not, at least initially, not have bus and turn lanes. We've been told by FDOT, even though Fort Pinellas did vote for that, those will not be part of the resurfacing project that is still ongoing right now down there. But it will have, as Harry identified, we're going to get some funding for enhancing the stops and providing real-time information. And hopefully, FDOT has indicated a willingness to help us support transit signal priority technology, like the Sunrunner lane has, service has. So, just wanted to give you an update on that. There's supposedly some regulations coming out, new regulations coming out about lane repurposing. But Abhishek, have you seen actually a copy of it?
Yeah, draft copy was out.
A draft. Okay, but is that that's not a final?
It says final draft and it's dated July 9th. There's no draft. That's kind of what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I thought they were going to issue a final. That's why I didn't say that they've come up with a new rule yet. But maybe it is final. I don't know. We'll find out. But any questions on any of those items? Or Ron, do you have any comment on 2, 3, or 4 on my list?
No, but I think you covered it. So no, and I'll get clarification on the DOT rule. I think it is final, but I'll get clarification on that.
All right, any questions? Yep.
Thank you. Regarding the bus routes, and it says, advertisements of any kind, so that goes beyond wraps, but
Or you-
regular, any kind of advertising. I mean, our wraps aren't really ads, they're just themed
Yeah,
decor, if you will.
true.
But, you know, when it comes to ads, that,
A revenue source for PSP.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly, it's revenue. So, so my first question on that is, does that include advertising on board? Because as you mentioned, Sunrunner doesn't have advertising on the exterior of the bus, but you do have the video screens on board.
I don't think it covers that, I don't think. I think it is just the exterior ads on the buses that is covered.
Yeah, Brad, it's just exterior ads. There was some talk about that, their ability, does that impact our ability, A, to brand anything with inside the bus, or then more importantly, it does not impact bus shelters and any of those things, it's just the exterior of the bus, I believe.
Okay, thank you. So, I think that's worth thinking about,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
as we shift, that practice. And then, do you keep a list of the buses? Do you have like the bus numbers and how each individual bus was funded? So that you know which ones are the FTA buses and, I mean,
She's shaking her head, yes.
I thought you were asking like
That's
in my brain, no. Not.
Brad probably does have it in his brain, he's got the best memory ever, but, we're required to take each asset that we have and indicate the funding associated with it.
okay. I don't necessarily need to see the whole list, but I would be interested to know total number of buses, how many were funded by FTA, how many were funded by FDOT, and I've been here on this board a few years, so I've got a pretty good idea based on how much funding we get from the state. But I would love to see those numbers. And then zero in on the ones that were specifically funded by FTA, and what can we do with those? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
the door closes, you look for a window, right? So I'd love to see that window. Thank you. And then, I would also be very interested to know with these, with some of these other things, not just 1301, but what the state association is saying, what their perspective is on these changes, and, because, you know, FPTA is a great, organization for advocacy. They look at how this affects all of the, transit agencies in the state of Florida, and I think that collective voice should be meaningful. So,
Yeah.
I really would like to know what their perspective is on this, what their thoughts are, and, what their approach would be to advocacy on this. I mean, Ron has talked about, you know, we talk about going to us, talking to leadership, all of that, but what if it's not just us? I mean, other bus services are affected as well. And I think it's important that, you know, folks who are making decisions understand the statewide effects that has on everyday people who are just trying to get from point A to point B, and the people who are trying to make that happen.
No
So-
doubt, no doubt.
So what can you tell me about when we might get some information on how FPTA is handling this?
Yeah, well, as Ron just described, I think they're sort of on the same time frame as we are as far as putting together a legislative action plan for the next session this fall. so far, these regulations have just been put together by the DOT and issued out just in the last month. And so at the meeting I was at a week ago with all the cities across Florida, FDOT was there kind of presenting this, and then there was just a ton of questions from all across the state, about different issues. A lot of the more rural areas of Florida, their buses are paid for by the state. And so there was a lot of questions from the rural counties about their buses. So what was decided upon just at the meeting in July was a letter is going to be sent listing, basically got a letter asking to FDOT, asking all the questions about how to implement this new regulation. And so that's the first step, is just kind of getting some clarity on exactly what they mean. And then, but then the plan I know is to have a separate discussion about a strategic sort of plan on what we should do during the legislative session, or with the legislature.
As a group.
As a group, including our private parties, including the outdoor advertising lobby and any other group that we can show the importance of this. And it's an important revenue source across Florida for almost every transit system out there. So,
Does the ad restriction cover buses only, or does it also include a restriction on advertising that could happen on other types of PSTA vehicles, like PSTA access vehicles?
We don't own those, dude.
We don't own those, so we could theoretically tell our contractor.
Right now, it pertains just to buses.
It's just buses, it's not boats, it's not anything else, it's just buses.
Okay,
Anything else?
great to know. No,
Okay.
thank you for the time.
Any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Great job.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, we're done with that. Guys, have a great day. We appreciate everything. Harry, see you later, buddy.
Thank you all.
Bye, Harry.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, next item on our agenda is item 6, other business. Does anybody have any other business?
And just to finish my quick discussion that I had about Kansas City.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So, Commissioner Reed and I agreed to try to get a meeting with go to Kansas City and meet with the commission and talk to them further about this, and confirmed that what would be required would be a vote by the citizens of Kansas City in favor of joining PSTA, and then also a approval by the state legislature.
So it's a referendum for the citizens, and then after that passes, it would go to the state, or the state first?
I think prior. I think the legislature would have to approve it first, and then it would be a vote.
Okay.
So my meeting with Ron later this week is to get his take or come up with a strategy if Kansas City wants to pursue this.
What is the population of Kansas City? I don't know. Do you know by any chance?
I looked it up, I can't remember.
Okay.
It's pretty small.
Hey,
Yeah, not
Siri.
much.
Not much?
And highly dysfunctional.
Is it over like 15,000?
Highly dysfunctional government.
Oh, God. Well, thanks for sharing that.
So,
I don't know if they have a full slate of.
So, a couple,
Never
mind.
Their city manager. They've gone through a ton of.
Okay.
How many?
So,
5,010, that's a 2022
5,000?
statistic.
5,000. That's a lot of money.
so, so 2 things on that. One, is an option that's easier, perhaps, would be that, when the county's citizen representative seat opens up, due to term limits, there could be someone from Kenneth City who applies for that seat.
Oh,
And the
Oh,
county
okay.
commission, in their decisions, could consider that as one of however many applicants they get for that seat. So that's one way for Kenneth City to look at having a voice on the board.
From, in just my conversation with Commissioner Reed, it was not so much a voice, he feels like he's a very good voice for them, that they want the bus to come to Kansas City.
Oh, okay, and how much do they pay to PSU now?
Zero.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. So I think that if this moves forward and if it becomes, a board decision, then I think we can't stop with just this, but we have to look at the way that the entire board is structured. Because we say that and we all understand, but that's not consistent across our board as sort of a question or a qualifier. So I think it really begs for a larger discussion on the rules regarding the board makeup. I don't know if that's something that, we wanna get into, but I just feel like I don't know that we're expanding the board right now, and it just sounds like a lot for them to go through, but.
Do
I
they
mean, as long
want
as
board
this process-
representation?
Well,
No.
he didn't say that.
No, I don't think it's board representation, I think it's just add them, and we get their tax revenue, which I don't know how much would be.
But
Then we'd have to run a bus.
would it be easier to contract with Kenneth City to add a bus stop and just say, hey, you owe us $50,000 a year, or however much money it would cost, and run a contract with the city to do that?
Yeah.
So
I
that
mean,
way we're not giving them something for free, they're paying for it. And we
Right.
just figure out what the cost is instead of, going through the referendum, going through getting approval through Tallahassee and all that.
Yeah, well, that's why we suggested having a meeting with them first to give them,
Yeah.
tell them all the options.
Because they've gone through, I don't know if it's more stable now, but there was a time when they were just absolute circus.
Yes.
And going through city manager after city manager.
Once the mayor left, was
Yeah,
it Wendy?
And,
Once she left.
and city council members were resigning, they'd show up to a meeting and just resign, and highly dysfunctional.
I had proposed to, couple city managers ago, a contracted service that, it seemed like they were positive, but then there was some change.
Right, and then they get rid of that guy, and then they wanna do something else.
Yeah,
So,
we'll see.
Okay, you have another question, go ahead.
yeah, so when's the next conversation about this supposed to take place?
I think you have.
We're trying to get a meeting with, Kansas City, and then I'm just trying to confirm with Ron, the process. If they do wanna move forward with this, if we could Tallahassee to approve, then how that would, how we would
Okay.
do
And
that.
the
I'll be report back.
contract, the contract option sounds great.
Yeah.
But might there be some pushback from some saying that it's kind of a sneak around from that process?
I mean, there's precedence with Treasure Island and
Another option.
St. Pete Beach.
Okay,
That's what they do.
okay.
All right, we good?
Yeah.
Thank you. Next item is item 6, other business. Anybody want to share? County Commissioner, you must have something to share with us. today.
Good.
All right, he's good. All right, then, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Great meeting. Chris, you have a great day.
You too, buddy.
have that on a great day.
I don't know what the discussion should be about St. Pete Beach and leaving on the board and not having the service. Because I asked it last, and then this came up, so, they don't pay for service, but yet they're on our